Hello.
Hey.
Hello. I like this song. I think this is from Yoshi. This specific
It sounds like
song.
Yoshi Island.
What are we at? This yeah. Title theme from Yoshi's Crafted World.
I don't remember that game.
What up?
Shalom.
What up? Sorry, I'm not really checking Instagram, but I'll look every once in a while. Come join us on
Twitch.
Join us on Twitch or YouTube. Anyway, we'll be we're gonna record a couple episodes. Oh my gosh, I need to get a new stand.
Oh, I can tighten that for you.
There's a way to tighten it.
Yeah. You have to take this off right here, and then there's another tightening joint here and here. Yeah.
But anyway, welcome back to the Mixed Music Podcast. My hair is all crazy. I should probably wear a hat. So
I cut my hair off.
I think I'm like genuinely thinking about growing out my hair like quite a bit. I don't know. There's something about like while I have hair, and I'm not saying that I'm gonna go bald. I'm definitely not gonna go bald. But while I have hair, I want to like grow it out really long.
Yeah. So.
And I don't think I've ever looked good with long hair, but I think it's like also the fact that I've never really fully committed and tried it.
Yeah. So apparently this is something that was talked about at my mom's school because she's friends with some of the teachers that, do like, I want to say cosmetology. Does that have to do with hair as well? I don't know if it's the same department or not.
Cosmetology is makeup.
Just makeup alone? Okay, so whatever the department for hair is, because, as a hairstylist, she's like friends with the rest of them, blah, blah, blah. Either way, teacher brought up, they're like, hey, did you see the new study about COVID? And it's like, what's the study? If you caught COVID, apparently hair loss is a factor. I did not know this, and my mom looked at me one day and she's
I'm looking this up.
Look it up, because I kind of want to see the association and who's putting this out. Mom looks at me one day and she's like, man, your COVID must have been really bad because you started losing hair. I'm like, I thought it was called turning 30. Oh, like, I'm just going to go ahead and think that it's my 30s that kicked in, not COVID that kicked in.
The stressors created from COVID shock your body and disrupt the growth-rest cycle. The result is increased shedding of hair. As much as 30 to 50% of hair follicles are in the telogen stage compared to 5 to 10% several months after becoming infected with COVID.
So there's actually some
it sounds like temporarily.
Okay. Well, I hope I get all my hair back then, because I'm just factoring in that I'm 30 now. I'm not factoring in COVID.
So another thing too, nobody in my family is bald, but my mom's side of the family, like my grandpa's side of the family, has the
widow's peak.
There's a receding, I think it's called the receding hairline, but nobody in my family that has the receding hairline is actually bald.
So that's what I've noticed in my dad and my mom and my grandfather. Like, my grandfather is in his 90s and has a full head of hair. Unfortunately, on my dad's side of the family, can't really say the same. Both he and his father passed away before I really got to see an old age hairline thing. But I'm gonna go ahead and hope. I'm gonna hope that they would have had glorious hair.
I've genuinely never thought about, or never had, even now, like
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely just have not ever given a shit about keeping my hair. It's never happened.
But with that said, are you gonna go long? Are you gonna go like mohawk? Are you gonna go mullet? Like, what are you thinking? Yeah.
And typically, so it's interesting, like in America, maybe because of a lot of influence from the military, where like short hair is a form of discipline, and kind of to a certain degree in Japan, except it's mostly used by sports. People that do
really?
Sports. Yeah. So it's funny because in Japan, hello, test. Is my mic right?
Is it?
Oh, I turned off my mic. Oh, my bad. But
Nice.
In Japan, so in America, short hair shows discipline. In Japan, if your hair is too short, it's unprofessional. So like your hair would be unprofessional in a workplace in Japan.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go in like a rebel.
So it's like, and mine is also too short too. Well, although like the long on top and like fades or shorter on the sides is becoming a little bit more normal, but like at least the top is long.
So why is it that long hair would be more professional in a workplace in Japan?
Just cultural differences.
Yeah, because it's polar opposite.
I think it's like, yeah, no, I think it's like, it's more like like shaving your head is like a sign of immaturity. Because like only like elementary school, middle school, high school baseball players and wrestlers shave their head.
Is there like a specific
It's like long hair is
cultural
like
reasoning?
a form of like, and also to be fair, maybe it's the fact that like in like Asians in general just are there's bald people, but like compared to like European descent, just not as many.
Actually, now you mention it, I don't know a lot of bald Asian people.
Yeah. In Japan, there's definitely some, but like if an American went to Tokyo train station and looked around at all the men, I think they would notice and be surprised with how few bald people there are. They're definitely there.
Yeah.
But there's
there are
like there's
few.
like no
Yeah.
no skinhead culture.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right word, but
Not really.
we say it in Japanese like skinhead.
Yeah, in
Like shaving your
America, if
head.
you say somebody has a skinhead,
Isn't
could-
that like gang thing? Isn't there, like,
No,
a gang?
it's more of a racial thing. Not even like
Racial?
No, it's so skinheads are usually associated with like the Nazi party and all that.
I see.
So that's why I'm like, maybe not the right choice in America. Like if it's in Japan,
yeah.
then
We
cool.
in Japan
Yeah.
we totally say skinheads.
Yeah, I
Right.
forget what the other word that you said. Like in Japan, translates, but out here it doesn't. I forget. I don't know.
So like people who
every
shave their
culture
hair,
has like different phrases.
But anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
that's something interesting. Yeah, I've never. It's an interesting thing. So I've never really cared. But apparently, I thought like, oh, this receding hairline is from my Caucasian father, but it turns out it's not. It's from my grandpa's side of the family. But the fact that my hair is so wildly curly is from my grandma's side of the family. Which
Wait,
it doesn't
what
matter
is your
because
grandma's
my
side of the family?
it doesn't matter because my grandparents on my mom's side, they're both cousins, so it's like it doesn't really matter
So
because
technically, same family.
same family.
It's like that works.
But yeah, I'm thinking about growing my hair out and
should do it.
tying it up, maybe like doing like a man bun type thing. I'm not sure yet.
I'm not gonna lie.
Also, then at that point,
Henry mentioned wanting to do a man bun in the future. So if you were to show up with a man bun first and just be like, "Hey, Henry,"
well, it's also like what I also want to do is like grow it out for a while, and then pay like a proper hairstylist, like a couple $100 to do like an omakase.
Is that
omakase
is that
haircut?
what a proper hairstylist is?
No, like a very renowned, like a nice hairstylist.
Like they have a poster somewhere.
Yeah, and to be like, yo, my hair is long. This is modeling clay for you. You do whatever you think would look good on my head. And just like, like omakase?
Yeah,
That's like
yeah,
a Japanese word that
yeah.
kind of translates. Omakase, like let them go like full omakase and be like, you do what you think looks best. You're the boss. But anyway, in the meantime, I'm going to go like Japanese punk mode and just like continue to grow this front bit out. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to. Now I'm getting.
My overlords.
Also, my hair doesn't grow down. It's literally an afro, and the reason why it's this movable right now is because I shampooed yesterday.
I think Dami and I are on the same page though. He's saying mullet. You should rock a mullet.
Rocking a mullet. Hold on, now I'm actually.
Did you know
gonna
there's
get-
actually the children's mullet competition of the U.S.?
No way.
Yeah, there's an actual competition for best mullet in the U.S. for kids. For kids. Let me see. Best mullet contest. Kids. Here we go. Let me see. I gotta find this. Yeah, the mullet champ. Yeah, the USA Mullet Championships. And it's comedic. Yeah, it's the USA Mullet Championships.
I mean, my youngest has a mullet, but that's because we refused to cut his hair.
So, here's third place.
I don't know.
Didn't really fully work, but second place and first place. I like how the mohawk is slightly to the left.
You gotta cut your face. It automatically censors faces. There you go. Focuses on faces. Anyway.
It is what it is.
Hey, do you want anything from 7-Eleven? Dami asks.
Oh, hell yes. I'll take a kickin' chicken sandwich.
Ooh, can I get a Arizona green tea? Kicking chicken sandwich.
Yeah, I'm really hungry. I didn't eat breakfast and I went to the gym.
No, what the heck? No, I'm not commenting on your desire to eat, but what is a chicken sandwich?
So, you know the chicken salad sandwich at 7-Eleven? Like when we were hungry when we first opened the studio and we'd just go to 7-Eleven and grab whatever sandwiches were there. So the chicken salad sandwich, they decided, okay, let's add Chipotle to it.
Oh, so it's just a spicy chicken sandwich.
Yeah. Not Chipotle, sorry, Sriracha. Yeah, that's all it is. It's a chicken salad sandwich.
Sriracha is fairly spicy compared to like other traditional like mainstream spicy sauces.
I'm not going to lie. You know what it tastes like to me? Tapatio and mayonnaise combined.
The Tapatio by itself like is not that spicy.
It's not, but you got to add enough for it to do something.
But like Sriracha is pretty just spicy.
Yeah.
Also, like
it might be like a different sauce.
I think I heard a story. I heard a story where the owner of Sriracha was like confronted. He's like, "Yo, your sauce is too spicy. It's like it won't be mainstream. It's too spicy." And he's like, "Well, what's the point of making like spicy sauce if it's not spicy enough?" Like,
yeah.
Or something like that. And so he's like, "Nah, I'm not changing it, bitch." Like,
so what about those Nike shoes? Like, you made running shoes too good to run in. It's like, wasn't that the point? I think I hit the goal. I think I just
for real.
won. I win at shoes.
We were talking about the Nike Air Max Next Percent, which were I don't know if it's still, but at one point was banned from like professional competitions for long distance running because they were proven to have or thought to have too big of a technical advantage over other shoe companies and other shoes, which ended up becoming the best marketing for their shoes ever, right? But
you're so good, I can't have you sell these shoes to Olympic runners. It's just cheating. They found a real life cheat code.
I know, for real. Hey, Dami, are you serious about getting us stuff from 7-Eleven? Because
Yeah,
I'm serious about wanting that green tea.
Yeah, and I'm really serious about that sandwich. I need to eat something. It's 2 o'clock.
Oh, did we all talk about demoitis? What? Dirty South Prince? Did you see my tweet? My post about my tweet?
Dirty South Prince. That's hilarious.
If y'all want to be triggered, just follow me on Twitter, because I say some pretty triggering things, and I want to say more. I think about more triggering things, but I don't like post them because, like, I have them in drafts because I'm like, I don't actually care enough to actually provoke people. But there's like for example, like the one I wanted to tweet today, or at some point this last week, was like, where are all of the women that are getting paid less, and how do I hire them? As like, if I can save costs as a someone that hires, because women are accepting lower pay, I want to hire them and them alone. I don't want to hire any man. And that was my thought. Why the fuck would I hire a man if a woman is willing to get paid less? That was my thought.
I feel like that one would definitely put you in a hot seat.
But like, I'm trying to hire women. No, but yeah, no, things like that. I'll say some stuff. I need to start an anonymous Twitter and then just start beef. I call people out. It's like, no, you just straight up lied. That's lying, dude. That's not.
Show me the facts. Show me the Carfax.
No, not Carfax. No, I'm not gonna be. Ben Shapiro is still a dick. Like, sometimes, like.
Who the hell is Ben Shapiro?
Don't worry about it. If you don't
Is
know
that the
don't worry
proper
about it.
question? Who the hell is Ben Shapiro?
I think that is the proper question. Who the hell is Ben Shapiro?
Like, somebody told me, they're like, oh, so what do you think about Alex Tate? I'm like, I don't know, but
Andrew Tate?
Dude, see, and that's the thing. I don't even know his first name.
Yo, Andrew Tate, is that? I think his name. I discovered him like within the last couple weeks, like since I got back from Japan. Like by the time he was already banned. From
so
most of the
is he
stuff.
basically version 2 of the, what was his name? The dating genie or the dating magician? Do you remember there was that one like super douchey guy that was making videotapes on how to pick up women at bars?
How I describe him is totally based around how you want me to describe him. Because in one way, I could describe him as an extremely misogynistic. Women and men need to know their places. And the other side of it is I can say that he's extremely motivating and helps people get their ass back into shape.
I've never heard him, so I don't really know.
It totally depends on what your personal biases and beliefs are. And I'm on the point of,
Yeah.
I'm on this. Do you know David Goggins?
No.
I've been reading.
Remember
listening.
this. I love living under a rock. Less
So
stress.
he's got a really famous and popular book now. David Goggins is he's got a book, and I've been listening to it while I'm on a run.
Mhm.
Crazy stories about this dude. Apparently, he wanted to run for some fundraising run to honor his fallen friends during his time in the Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
And in order to qualify for that fundraiser run, he had to run 100 miles within 24 hours. After 70 miles, he was going through kidney failure from dehydration because he went with a single water bottle and a pack of crackers. After 70 miles, both of his feet had fractured bones in them. After 70 miles, he taped up both of his feet to his calves so they couldn't bend anymore, and he fucking finished that race
Yeah.
with a failed kidney and 2 broken feet. And then he went on, and then he did 2 Ultra 100s 8 weekends in a row, meaning that like he ran 100 miles. I forgot what it was, like 100 miles, which takes a normal, typical trained runner an entire 6 months to recover from. He did that every weekend for 8 weekends in a row. The dude is a goddamn beast, and his book is about like his horrible things. Like he witnessed so many people getting murdered and killed, and like his dad was absolutely abusive, and like he was the type of person, like victim mentality. Like in the book, there's like he pulls out specific times when he was called like the N-word and very like racialized and ostracized, living in like a very white Midwest, and like how he turned his life from becoming a victim to like, I eat shit for a living. And like, to be honest, like I don't know what he does for work. I think what he does for money is to be like a motivator and like do these runs. Like I don't know what he does, but anyway, his story is incredibly inspiring. And as far as like my biases and my filters tend to be aligned more with the get shit done, be a man mentality. Not in a toxic way, but for your own personal mental health way.
Yeah.
Not like in a misogynistic men are better type thing, but more like, as a man, I think that I'm going to teach my sons to be strong. Yeah. Because if you are strong, then you will be happy. Yeah. Is kind of like my mentality. That's my biases and my filters.
So where does the Tate, because I don't know if it's Andrew or Alex, I'll be honest.
He's got brothers. I don't know how many there are. I'm not super into them. I'm not really.
But where did their popularity come from?
I don't know. I think he said some really supposedly sexist shit, and then like that spiraled, and people were like, "Oh,
it always spirals from one thing."
I don't know.
Let's be honest. You could do 10 things right, but the moment you do one thing wrong, that's the one thing everybody remembers.
Yeah.
That's why I always tell people, like, have you ever heard like have you ever met somebody who's very bitter later in life, but then the more you get to know them, you find out that they are actually very, very nice and kind people that are very helpful. But the reason they became bitter is because every time they helped, they found that most people did not reciprocate, or that at some point they were just left alone.
I think I know where you're going with this, but I will say one caveat with this.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody that's ever said I'm tired of being nice was never nice to begin with. To be fair,
yeah.
Anybody that's like a dick and says I'm tired of being nice, people took advantage of me, were never nice to begin with.
Is that really the case? Do you?
Yeah, I think so.
Like think about it.
Definitely 100%. Yeah.
Think about it. It's never about the trade
because
necessarily.
being nice is not a decision. If you're truly nice, it's a part of your character. You don't decide to be nice. You're just kind.
So let me ask you this.
If I choose to be like, it's not a choice.
Do you think? All right, let me ask you this.
If choosing to be nice is being a liar.
So let me ask you this: choosing to be nice when you don't feel inclined to, is it wrong of you to do that? Is the choice to be nice wrong? Are you dishonest in being polite?
Sometimes.
Are you dishonest in the action of saying it's better for me and for my relationship with other people if instead of being rude and being naturally rude, to actually go out of my way to become this other person?
Okay, so you're saying is being nice
wrong?
Is being nice wrong? And
if
I think there are
that's
times
not
where
your
being
natural
nice,
nature.
I think at times being nice and dishonest is wrong.
Okay, so is it wrong when it's in your benefit or in the benefit of the other person?
Wait, so is it wrong to be nice when it's in the benefit of the other person?
Yes.
I think it's wrong to be nice when it's in the benefit of the other person. I think the one that I want to hang out with the most is the one that's like able to have fun with me and like tell me good things about me, but also is going to be real with me. And like, if I give a speech, I want my closest friends to be like, yo, that was shit. You need to work on your free speech.
If, let's say that you found yourself in some financial hardship.
But I also don't think that those people who give me harsh feedback, I don't think that they're actually
No.
not nice.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying, let's say you found yourself in some financial hardship that you had the potential to lose something very dear to you. Let's say it be your home, food on your table, whatever. And the other person really doesn't want to give you money or lend you money or offer an opportunity for you to be able to get back on your feet, but they do it because they know it's good for you. Is that wrong?
Depends. It depends. I do
What does
believe
it
that
depend
giving
on?
people money that they don't earn is wrong. And that means for me receiving it
No,
too.
that's why I said, and giving you the potential to earn it, to get you back. I didn't say give it to you and hold it against you.
No, you did, but now you're changing
Okay,
what you meant. Okay.
Well,
but
let's say that it was in the idea of teach somebody to fish, not give a fish.
I do hope that. I think it's better for a man to teach me how to fish and not give me money directly.
But what if they didn't want to?
Then
Is it
then
wrong
it's
of
not
them
their
to
it's
do?
not their responsibility to.
But is it wrong for them to want to actually help you, even if that's not their personality?
No, it's not wrong for them to want to help me. It's great that they want to help.
But that's my point.
No,
See,
they made no point. There was no point made.
No, some people will actually help even if they don't want to. They know it's the right thing to do, but they have to move against their
Wait, what
nature.
does that have to do with like getting paid or teaching them to fish?
I guess my point is more on the side of like, okay, if it's wrong to help people if you don't want to, that the idea is it's wrong to be nice when you don't want to be, if that's not naturally you. It's like, yo, sometimes you have to recognize that you have to be nice even if you don't want to be.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think we agree on the same point, but there's a roundabout. By the way, this is how me and Lou's typical conversations
Yeah,
go.
we
love
like
this.
the devil's advocate thing where it's like,
We're
hold on, let's
we're beating on each other
Yeah.
and being honest with each other. But
Yeah.
anyway, no, I do think that if you're genuinely kind, it's not a choice. That even if you don't want to, you will be nice, and that is a form of kindness. What I don't think is kindness is when people say, I'm tired of being nice, so I'm not going to be nice anymore. That means you were never nice to begin with.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
anyway, that has nothing to do with mixing, but it comes to the point. I think that
I
there's
mean, you
forms
could
of,
apply
like,
that to like your client relationship, to be
Oh
honest.
yeah, and
Think about it. At a certain point, it's like, yo, do you really like this song? It's like, do you say no?
there's been
Do you say no, this song sucks, I'm just taking your money?
there's a
Or do you say, no, actually it's pretty decent, it's just not my flavor? Or do you say, no, I think it's creative?
there's a Lou, there's been a couple times where you've sat me down, and I think we've done this together. Like you sat
Yeah.
me down and called me out on my shit, and then I've sat you down and called you out on your shit.
And I love it.
And exactly.
Yeah.
Like and there's this thing here. It's like it hurts and it's painful, but like at the end of the day, who else are you gonna ask for real, down to earth, non-egotistical, egotistical like feedback?
Yeah.
Like if my mixes suck,
Just tell me.
and I want it. And first off, I think it's like two-way trust. Like I want to trust when you do say it sucks. I want to know that you're doing it for my intentions and that you're not bitter.
Or you're not doing it from an ego standpoint where you're like, fuck, that's actually nice of mine.
Ex-
Well, I found this wrong with it. It's like, no, it's solid. I'd probably just maybe this one part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, which goes to my point. Or sorry, I'm gonna try to segue into my tweet from earlier today. I get a lot of people that's like they talk about demoitis. They're like so frustrated. Did you see it? Did you see my tweet?
The one that hold on. I want to see if I get it verbatim. Those who say that their clients have demoitis really just suck at mixing. Just get better.
Yeah, for real. Okay, yeah. Here's the verbatim tweet. By the way, the how I worded it doesn't matter. But the point is, some of y'all complaining about clients having demoitis genuinely suck at mixing. Shut the fuck up and mix better. I think there's two sides of the coin. I think some people are much better at mixing than like. By the way, we should be recording this conversation. I need to record this conversation, but we already kind of had an episode about cognitive bias, and we did a deep dive. But this is like one practical application, and so some people like they're generally good at mixing, and they're looking for advice, but like. Yo, it's like they just don't understand that you're allowed to be confident with your shit.
Yeah.
And then there's some people who are like way overly confident.
Yeah.
And it's like, yo,
It's like, I don't need your advice. Like,
Yo, shut the fuck up.
What
You
the
need to
fuck was that
listen.
note? Like, I like that build up at 200 hertz. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh. And so yeah, and because of that, like Lou, we talked about like I genuinely appreciate a friend's like, yo, DK, you need to get your shit together. Like not like there's a difference between like criticism and like I can tell that you want me to be better for like mutual benefit.
Yeah. Like I remember one of the things DK once told me. I was starting to, I guess you could say, lose focus or had my mind in other places. So I showed up a couple times late to things, and he's like, "Hey Lou, I just wanted to like politely remind you, like you have a calendar too." And I was like, "Oh shit!"
And I don't think
like,
I talked about it again after.
No, never again. It was like, "Oh shit, I fucked up."
and it's at that
and
point,
it's not even like it wasn't even like, "Lou, you're fucking up." It was like, "Hey man, like respect each other's time."
I'm just like calling you out real quick. Because at the same time, like I could tell that you knew. And so I didn't need to say anything in that specific instance. I didn't say anything, so I was just like, "Hey, I just want to let you know I see it too," and that's it. And then the next day you came in like 8 a.m.
I was like, "Oh fuck!" But see, like that's kind of the good thing, because like there's like I have my friends, and I always tell people like I'm a big believer in if you can't talk shit with each other, then you can't really claim that you're friends, because you're always tiptoeing each other. I should be
recording this. Hold on. Can we? Do we want to? Is this going to be a
what
good?
Is the episode?
What is the episode? I don't know what the episode is.
What do you guys think the episode
Let's talk about
is?
this. No. I think it's good. This is just a ranting episode. Let's just.
I guess building expectations with your team.
I'm gonna start off with talking about the tweet and talking about. I want you to talk about this, like the feedback. Hi.
Oh my god.
Wait, did Dami come?
Thank you, Dami.
He actually came.
I think Dami just saved my stomach. I'm not gonna lie.
Actually came.
It's the kickin' chicken.
Oh, it's the sweet tea. Dang it. No, it's okay, Dami. It's all right. Sweet tea.
I think he mentioned that. In the comments. They only have the fruit
Package
punch
delivered.
and sweet tea, no green tea.
They only have fruit punches. Oh, there we go. Dang it. No, it's all right. Sweet tea's good too.
I'm gonna like scarf one of these real fast. You guys are about to see me eat really weird. This is like post gym, no breakfast.
All right. Oh, how many? No fat in this. Sugar, 61 fucking grams of sugar. Holy
How many
crap.
servings per can, too?
No, that's for the entire can.
Oh.
61. I don't think I've eaten anything with 61 grams of sugar in the past couple weeks.
What about chocolate?
No, I have not had any chocolate or snacks in the last since I've been back from Japan. We don't have snacks in our home. Isn't that crazy? Like, because if we have snacks, if I bought a couple bags of chips, those chips would be gone within 2 days. I do not have self-control, and I'm willing to admit that. So because of that, we just don't buy snacks.
So I told Anna to stop buying string cheese and things of that nature. Like I may tell her to stop buying milk as well, unless it's oat milk. Not because of any like dietary reasons or farts and whatever, but I'm trying to clean up the habit. Like I said, like a lot of the goal for me right now going to the gym is more personal long-term change versus like any kind of like specific goal. But part of that is like I was talking to Henry today, and he's like, you should really just cut off all eating out except for Sundays. Like go to fucking restaurants all day on Sunday if you want, but if you were to cut it out throughout the week, not only will you have better meals because you'll have everything homemade, no fast food, no 7-Eleven or anything like that, but you'll also save a lot of money too. So it's kind of like a double win.
Yeah, so recently, because of my running, and I'm no professional in this, and Henry would be better, but I've been learning a lot about like how calories work and like being in a caloric deficit. So
we were
like
literally
doing,
just talking
like,
about that today.
Weight versus height and how much you typically burn if you just sat there. And then if you run, that means you can eat more and gain and still be in a caloric deficit. And so like one thing that I do is I drink a lot of water and drink coffee in the morning. Get that caffeine going and my heart running. And I skip breakfast, which is debatable. It's not good. If I'm feeling pretty like anxious, then I'll eat breakfast. I do find that like being empty stomach is direct effect on my anxiety or any sort of like mental thing going on. But most of the time, if I'm feeling pretty healthy and good, I'll just skip breakfast. I'll go on a run around lunchtime before lunch, and then I'll come back, eat some lunch or something. So like, yeah, and then I'm not really paying attention, but like close enough to know that like I'm definitely have been in a caloric deficit the last couple weeks. I'm hungry.
There's a MyFitnessPal app that actually really helped me kind of like understand like at least how to eyeball better what I'm eating. Like I did it for like 2-3 weeks. I want to say maybe a month where like I logged my meals just so I can understand like, okay, from what I'm eating, like this is what I'm averaging. So I probably got to clean up a few items, maybe a little more of this, maybe a little less of this.
It really was called Kickin' Chicken. It really was called Kickin' Chicken. You know what we should do on your next? How was you started working out recently?
It's been good.
Like past at least the last 2-3 weeks minimum.
3 weeks now.
Nice. It's just consistency at that point. You're talking about. It seems like you have like a healthy mindset. It's more. I'm calling it out on the air so that way we can hold ourselves accountable. Me too. I've been running every day, but dude, yeah, you were talking about something really healthy, like it's the fit mentality and just the mentality of going to the gym every day.
Like
not necessarily about the results, the direct results.
Like today's thought leaving the gym, it was like, holy fuck, I didn't realize I was in there for 2 hours.
You were there for 2 hours? God damn.
I work out 2 hours every day that I go.
Nice.
Yeah.
When I go, typically, I'm only in there for an hour. But I also only work out the muscles that are aesthetically pleasing, and I don't care about getting strong.
Like me? I think I was talking about this earlier where, like, I really like going to the gym, and the fact that Henry's not focused on me putting on all the weights on the machine, but rather, like he was telling me earlier, like how I dropped the weight, and I'm like, okay, I just need to drop the weight so I can get the form right. He's like, you know, when me and you were working out like a year ago, you came in with a lot more power. You had a lot more, strength, and I'm seeing that you don't right now. Like you have less strength than you did before. Henry. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, a year ago you were doing better, but you stopped going, and I can tell.
Yeah, I find that like, yeah, I definitely like what I don't want to do. I don't want to get too deep. Maybe we should just start the episode. But I just remember one time as like a Boy Scout, we did like a Boy Scout activity where we all went to a boxing gym, and it was super fun and awesome. And I just remember like my dad like not being able to do 10 push-ups, and it's just like, gosh, like I just like in that moment, like, by the way, my dad is a loser. But in that moment, I saw him for the first time for the loser that he actually was, that he was hiding, that he was really good at hiding. And I was like, God damn. So like now, recently I've been motivated, especially listening to like Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, where like he talks about his horrible father. And I'm like, yeah, I'm partially motivated just because I don't want to be a loser father.
Yeah.
And like if I can't teach my son Kaname, my oldest, to be strong if I myself can't be strong. So like I'm on that, like today, like I yelled at him, like I was yelling at him like an army sergeant, like because he refused to put his underwear on after he peed. So like he like for some reason sometimes he like just takes off his pants completely when he pees. I mean he's 4. He's 4. This is one of those cases. He just took them off completely. He's like, I need mommy to help put him on. I'm like, mommy's helping Kyo, the younger brother, to get in bed right now to help for his nap time. So I started yelling. I was like, I didn't say get your shit together, but basically that's how it sounds. Like, you need
your
to put
underwear together.
And I was like, and you're strong, you need to be strong. And then afterwards, he was like crying and stuff, and I was like, in that moment, I felt like it was a good dad thing though, because after he had done everything, like put his new clothes on, got changed from his pajamas as well. Like he was crying, but I hugged him, I embraced him, and like had him repeat like, I am strong, and he like, I'm strong, and then I had him yell it, I'm strong, in the house. I'm sure the neighbors were annoyed, but I think that's like important. And like the thing that I tried to teach him, I know he's only 4, he's not gonna remember this, but like,
no, you'd be surprised.
I hope that like happiness comes from the ability to hold more responsibility, which is strength. Like you need to be strong, and you need to sacrifice. It's not that I think men should understand their feelings and be able to cry, but not due to stress. If that makes sense. Like I don't know. I don't know. I think that you have to be able to eat shit and take on stressful situations and be strong. And that's what makes people happy at the end of the day. And nobody that's living like and talking about how horrible and miserable their life is, and how all of the mental decisions, all the mental choices have led to an unhealthy mental state of mind. It's like, that's not, like, how much of not victim, I don't want to use that word, but like, how hurt do you have to be in order for you to eventually become happy from your hurt? There's no way.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, like, there's no way. Like, you cannot be more hurt, which increases your happiness. Like, if all of a sudden you're so hurt that you've proved to the government that you deserve Social Security, disability, and you start making money without doing anything, does that make you happy? No. Like, that doesn't make any man happy. I mean, being provided for general necessities can make someone happy, but like the idea, like, I don't know. I like, that's the conversation I had. Like, I embraced him.
If I wanted to make money not doing anything, just own property. Find something that actually will grow in value over time and you can get paid from. Just do that. But I'll be honest, like, during the pandemic, you know how many people were saying that they were depressed the whole time? The basic example would be, everybody was out of work. A lot of people were actually glad they were out of work. They saw it as like a mini vacation once that money started coming in, and they're like, oh yeah. But then once they realized, like, holy shit, it's been a year.
Okay, we need to start this podcast because we keep saying good. You keep saying good things. I keep saying good things.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start it.
All right, I'm gonna let you lead it because I don't know how the hell you want to start it.
Yeah, we're gonna. Hello and welcome back to the Mixing Music Podcast. I'm your host DK, and with me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Lollipop Lou. Lollipop, lollipop, oh, lollipop.
How many licks does it take to get to the center of a loo?
Oh my gosh. Oh,
well,
did I?
We'll just ask Anna.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's a great start to an episode. Welcome back to the podcast. We've been live streaming for like an hour now, and we were just ranting and going on tangents, and I'm like, why the heck are we not recording? If you're interested in hearing our rants before we start, yes, we do come up with our topics on the spot before we record them.
We have no idea what they are.
Yeah, like I brainstorm during the week, or we brainstorm while we're live streaming, but before we start recording.
But then half the time we end up choosing like what we were talking about in the moment.
Yeah, for sure. So all I'm going to do with this one, this might be a little bit ranty, but I think that this is going to be very important. I want this to be, and I think I'm going to make like a solo YouTube video about this that's not on the podcast to dive more in depth. But I want to start with this. I tweeted something today that I think is harsh but important to think about. And it's not so much true, but rather than something to think about as you look at yourself and try to be honest with yourself. I tweeted today, some of y'all complaining about clients having demo-itis genuinely suck at mixing. Shut the fuck up and mix better. And I'm not, to be honest, I actually would have to side with most people do not have this issue, and most people are actually better than they think. But there are many people out there that are blaming the client and blaming other people for and they do not have the integrity. I almost said the balls, but I think it, like, to be more realistic, the integrity to be real with themselves and take feedback. And here's the thing, oftentimes the client doesn't know what they're talking about, and they want but at the same time, they don't know how to articulate it, but they kind of know that what you gave them wasn't what they wanted.
Yeah, that's literally why I always tell people, like, yo, a big issue between like getting from the first mix to the final mix usually comes down to communication and understanding each other. Some people know what they're talking about, some people don't, but they know what they feel. They know what they want. And it's kind of on you to kind of learn what that is. Now, if the first mix wasn't there and they told you like, hey, it's not really there, and your response is like, well, I know better about mixing. Okay, cool. You might have technical knowledge, but they might be a little more creative than you and have a bigger picture like developed for this song than you did in your first mix.
Absolutely. I do. One sign of intelligence, and the reason why I bring this up is because I think it's important to anyway, one sign of intelligence is the ability to recognize when you're wrong, and also to recognize that there's something to learn from everyone around you.
Yep.
I don't know if you have, and maybe I don't know if I necessarily recommend this, but even just conceptually, if we went up to a homeless person right now in LA, which there's lots of homeless people, we had a conversation with them. Is there something that we can learn from them?
Yeah.
Exactly. Is there anybody that we couldn't learn anything from?
No. And I always tell people, if you're in a room where you feel like you have nothing else to learn, you're in the wrong room.
It's partially you're in the wrong room. You want to be the dumbest in the room, but also it's a mentality thing.
Yeah.
It's like, no, there's definitely something to learn from everybody
Yeah.
else. Yeah, it's incredible. And so first off, sometimes you just got to have integrity and be able to be honest with yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror and figure out what you need to work on and seek for advice. We had a conversation earlier today when I was recording the exclusive podcast episodes. We are sponsored by the Mixing Music Podcast, and we have exclusive episodes of the podcast that are hidden behind a paywall. For $4 a month or $40 a year, you can access 2 extra episodes a week on top of this free Tuesday released episode. So if you subscribe, go to mixingmusicpodcast.com/exclusive. You can subscribe to 2 extra episodes every single week. So it's an episode on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. So totally worth checking out. Anyway, on one of the conversations we were talking about with Braden, I briefly talked about the idea of taking advice from someone that's not a mixer. Or like someone that doesn't do mixes that you prefer.
You know, I actually talked about this the other day after the Pass the Aux event at the studio in the mix. One of the guests messaged me privately later on that weekend saying, hey, just wanted to say thanks for hosting the event, this and that. It was great, had a lot of fun, it was nice meeting you, you know, the usual pleasantries after meeting somebody, right? And I was like, hey man, I really liked your song. He's like, yeah, I don't know what the hell that other guy was talking about when he was trying to commentate on it, but I felt that was kind of weird. I was like, I don't know. I felt like there was some logic behind what he said. I understand he voiced it a little weird.
Isn't that the last open mic?
Yeah. I understand it was a little weird and the guy was a little bit out there kind of, but like part of what he said was very real. Like he knew how to look at it emotionally, maybe not technically. And because of that, I actually kind of agree with some of the things he said. He's like, no, like some of it made sense, but it's not very like, he doesn't really know what he's doing yet. Like he doesn't really have a name. I'm like, that doesn't mean he doesn't have a good idea.
Yeah, no, for sure.
That doesn't mean his concept's flawed.
You should consider it. You should never, no matter how much you disagree with the other person's opinion.
Yeah.
And in this case, we're thinking about the client. The client. Oh, hold on, that's a little bit of a different conversation because the client is always right, and that is the fact. Like the client is always right.
Yeah.
They're the ones paying you.
It's not your song at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's not your song at the end of the day. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as like life and learning about how to mix, you have to be able to take criticism well.
Yeah.
And,
even if it's your own music.
And if you want to get better, you have to be smart about it.
Yeah.
And being smart about it is being real with yourself. Although like specific to that conversation, I wish I was more assertive and I don't want to say more of a dick or like more hurtful. That's not the point. I wish I had the ability to be more honest. I think there's a lot of people in this world that'll listen to someone that has bad music that I think it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But they're considerate and they think that someone else is going to like it. Maybe not me, but someone else is going to like it. So I appreciate your creativity.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of that in this world. And I don't think there's enough people in this world that says straight up, that song sucked.
Yeah.
And due to the fact that there's already a bunch of that most people are already covering the base of like it's subjective, there's no right answer, that I feel like I need to be the voice. I should be the voice of like true, like unbiased, no filter truth. No, that song sucked. That was not it. You need to do better.
I think it's a very good and double-edged sword situation. Like the good side of the double-edged sword is like people are looking for that honesty. People are looking for you to be able to say, you know what? Like, I just want somebody to be brutally honest with me and that I can trust to be brutally honest with me. And a lot of times that's our friends, right? But also as friends, we also want to make sure that we're not alienating somebody by being so direct and forward with it that it demotivates somebody. Because I think you've said it in the past quite a few times where like we're not here to make people feel self-conscious. So finding a way, not necessarily to beat around the bush, but how to communicate a dislike and how to improve could be the more effective route without having to be so direct. Because I feel like a lot of times people don't, aside from people not being, having the strength to criticize somebody directly and so honestly, is people's ability to receive such a level of criticism. Like, can you take that criticism, embody it, and really learn something from it? Or are you going to double down or fold?
Yeah.
Like, most people double down or fold. Most people don't know how to take direct criticism on that level in a positive way. And I feel like that's why it's a double-edged sword. I don't think it's necessarily bad to be direct and honest. I feel like you also had to read the person in front of you.
I've definitely done that. Like me, who I feel like I'm pretty self-aware. Still, I catch myself doing that.
I feel like
I like refuse to learn something from this, or like I take it for granted, or I'm like, oh, that's just some bullshit.
like a stubbornness kind of thing.
Yeah, like
or-
stubborn pride, and like, I don't know, like at the same time, that pride also helps me out a lot in certain situations,
Yeah.
but there's moments when it gets in the way.
I feel like recently I found pride bite me in the ass.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. We talked about this before about creating boundaries and setting up certain limitations. And I found myself creating too many to the point where without anybody communicating it, I could see the difference. And that is where sometimes going too forward in a certain direction, though it is a positive sometimes, you can also see the negative in its effect. So I've seen where, like, sometimes certain approaches, no matter what it is, right? Sometimes it's communication and all that, or trying to lean more one way or another, can be a negative effect at a certain point if not done with enough thought. You know, and I think that's what it comes down to. I think it comes down to, like, the level of thought you put behind something, you know? For instance, like, I've met a lot of people who at one point want to become more assertive, and that's not a problem. They want to communicate and be taken more seriously. That's not a problem. But depending on your approach, it can be. You know, not because, people should understand your boundary and respect you more. That's not a problem. That should be a given. People should respect each other and respect each other's boundaries. But if you come off too aggressive with it, you are going to push people away. They're not going to respect your boundary necessarily. They're just going to walk away from it.
Yeah, typically, what like assertiveness training is important. Cognitive assertiveness training is important.
Both for the client
mostly,
and the
like,
provider.
The most common uses for that assertiveness training is like for the spouse that is unhappy at home and they feel like their partner is not working hard enough or like doing what they ask them. So like they need to step up and say, hey, you're not doing what I'm asking you to do. I'm in an unfair position. They need to stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
Or like a man or a woman wanting to get a pay raise, but they can't confront their boss about asking for something. Like it's more normal for people to negotiate themselves to get paid less. And that's why assertive people get paid more.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the idea of like person A or person B gets the same item, at the store, but maybe it's more expensive for person A than it is for person B. Well, that's because person B was more assertive and called them out on their bullshit and be like, I'm not paying that for this price. If you're more assertive, you can save money or not spend as much money. And then like exactly what you said, there are moments when being too assertive, being aggressive, over-aggressive is important. We're really getting on a tangent. I think the episode is more about like how to learn and thinking about where you can learn and how to expand your skills and how to be honest with yourself. Yeah, I do think it's important to, as well as like be dangerous, meaning that like having the confidence, like yes, we know that we don't know shit, but at the same time, I'm confident and I'm dangerous. Like, meaning, I think that's the reason why that's important is because to not, how does he say? Jordan Peterson once said, to not be violent is not a virtue if you're unable to be violent. Yeah. To choose nonviolence is only a virtue if you are capable of violence. Mm-hmm. That kind of idea, like, it's like if you have to be anyway. I think it's total tangent. But somehow it was connecting. I was on the right path. Somehow it's going to connect to what we're talking about. I think it's something to do with like the confidence.
I mean, think about it. Like,
that we
if
have.
you, whether, let's say from the client's perspective, if you really didn't like a mix and you paid a certain amount of money no matter what it is, which is why price is not really a factor. I always tell people expensive is relative, right? You felt like $1,000 for a mix from DK Mixes was worth it. And because of that, you're like, cool, I paid DK $1,000, but the mix I got back is not really on par with my expectation. Okay, if you just say okay because you chose to not be direct about it because you were scared to be direct about it, then you probably just got what you got, and that's it. But if you communicated, hey, DK, like it's close, but it's not really it. You know, like I was thinking more in this direction. I was thinking this. Cool. DK is not going to turn you away. Like, you having folded right away caused you to have that end result. While if you were to just have a little more assertiveness and speak up for yourself, you would have gotten the result you asked for, or at least been closer to it. But same thing on the actual mixer's end. As the provider, you want to actually look at the situation as like, hey, my client asked for this. I actually believe this is actually the route to go, but they're asking for more reverb and everything. This is their song. Cool. I'm going to turn up the reverb, but I'm going to negotiate. Hey, if we do this, can we do this? As I feel like adding more of this will cloud up the mix. But if I take away from this, this will actually help that and kind of balance things out again. How do you feel about that? And at that point, you don't have to fold at whatever the client asks for. You do have to communicate when you think you have a good idea, or at least what you believe to be a better idea for the end result, and try to find a middle ground, you know. But a lot of people will, instead of doing that, be like, oh, this client's too hard to work with. Like, they don't really know what they're talking about. They just keep asking for things that make it worse. It's like, do you not know how to work around more reverb? Do you not know how to get the vocals a little more forward in the mix when there's more reverb? I'm using more reverb as an example because everybody wants more reverb.
Dude, there's a specific example going along with this.
Mm-hmm.
One time I lost a client who I'm sad that I lost. Well, not really.
We can be sad about losing a client.
Not really for personal reasons, but yes, because they ended up doing a lot better than I thought they would. One time, first off, I don't know if this person was acting really dumb or like was actually really dumb, but there was definitely a lack of respect for this person. Not saying that I was smarter, but their cognitive inability was frustrating and making the session ineffective.
Gotcha.
And it was to the point where it's like, okay, you could be dumb, but this is just ineffective. It's just not working.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to decide at some point, like be decisive.
Yeah.
And anyway, I remember we argued for like 20, 30 minutes. This person said that they wanted more reverb or something arbitrary.
Just more something, yeah.
More of something on the track. And we argued for like 30 minutes. I was like, no, this is going to destroy the mix. No. And then I finally do it. Mm-hmm. Just to show her that it wasn't going to sound good.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sounded great. And then she's like, why did you argue with me for like 20 minutes about this? When you could have just tried it. Just try it. And then, and I'm not going to lie to you, that was a moment in my career I will never forget where pride
mm-hmm.
and expectation of this person, of who I thought that they were, the self-created image of this person, just totally got in the way, and I lost a client, and that person ended up actually getting a lot of streams on future songs and getting signed to a smaller label, and I don't think they're doing music anymore, but like at the peak of their career, which was a couple years after that, was doing quite well and would have been great for my portfolio.
Yeah.
But that's
where the ego got in the way.
Yeah, it totally got in my way. I remember that, and I will never let myself forget that moment.
I mean, the funny thing is this doesn't just apply to because think about it. It comes down to your ability to find a middle ground with your client. No matter whether it be mixing, mastering, whether it be recording, or even if it was, I don't know, a construction job. It doesn't really matter what it is. It kind of comes down to one's ability to actually say, you know what, let's give it a shot. If it was construction, as an example, like it's kind of hard to build something and then break it down again. But if they're willing to pay for it and they're like, look, I'll pay for it, whatever. It's like, all right, dude, like, look, you already communicated your end. And if that's not what they want, that's not what they want, period. Now, when it comes to mixing, let's be honest. How long does it take to do revisions? Like 5 minutes? Like, it's annoying to do them.
Well-
I get it. Depending on the revisions you get, but
also,
most.
like you got to consider like if the computer was off,
Mhm.
it takes time to turn up the
No,
computer, turn
totally.
up the software. If I'm using analog gear, reroute, it could be 5 minutes to an hour
Yeah, but
for the same amount
like
of
in my
instruction.
case, like everybody's case is different. In my case, like
Doesn't take, the
Thursdays
point is
and-
it doesn't take that long.
yeah,
Even if it
Wednesdays
took an hour,
and
it's not that
Thursdays,
long.
I'm doing revisions all day. Like, I have enough work on the table to where like revisions alone can take a day.
Yeah.
So because of that, once I knock out one revision, it's not that hard for me to move on to the next song.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're right. If I had to walk into a fresh day just to do one revision, then yeah, it's gonna take a while. It's gonna take 30 minutes to an hour maybe, depending on what's going on. But the idea here is like, you shouldn't just dodge somebody's creative opinion just because you think you're technically better. Like, honestly speaking, we've all as professionals have dealt with creative where we don't see eye to eye with, and that's totally normal. You're not supposed to be able to agree with everybody. If you were able to agree with everybody, me and DK wouldn't be able to have the conversations that we do where we play devil's advocate and it's like, call me out on this, call you out on this, blah blah blah, blah, whatever. That would never be possible. And with a lot of my clients, I actually do that. I actually really like working with those clients too. They may not technically be the most successful clients that I have, but they're the funnest to work with because it's like you find the middle ground. They understand your side and they actually try to find a middle ground themselves as well. They're like, okay, if you think that's going to work against it, how about we try this? Can we try this? And they'll work with you. But if you can't form that level of communication with somebody, then it's your ego. Let's just be honest. If it's on your end that you can't form that conversation, it's ego just getting in your way. If you think, hey, more reverb is the issue, and everything in you is telling you don't do it, and not one part of you says just try it, then it's ego getting in the way. If the client is saying, I have an issue with the way we're working because you're not taking me seriously, let's be honest, they put money in your pocket, not the other way around.
Yeah.
You're not producing the record. You were hired to mix or master or whatever. You don't have any ownership of that master unless always negotiated. And if you do have partial ownership of that master, then yeah, you have an invested interest.
There's a balance though, because sometimes people do pay me to give pushback.
No.
They pay
and
me, and like,
but
so
that's part of the
sometimes-
communication with the
yeah,
client.
that's like reading you always talk about reading the room
Yep.
and like communication with the client. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that's why I'm always saying, like, yo, if you don't know a client and you're working with them for the first time, don't take on an album. Don't. Just ignore the album. Say a single. If the single works out, cool. We can work on the next one. Okay, cool. That one worked out. Okay, maybe we do like 3 songs in a batch now that we kind of got to know each other. But if on the first song you notice that there's a lot of clashing back and forth and any of it feels like it's ego, whether it be on your end or the client's end, it may not be a good working relationship. This is why I tell people, like, yo, if you have a 9 to 5, keep it and just work with the clients you want to work with. Forget about taking every client that you can. Just focus on building good relationships, because those, let's be honest, most professionals in our industry rely more on their relationships than they do on new business.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. I think I want to wrap up this episode and keep it kind of short, but something to think about. I do think that in general, people are dishonest with themselves and dishonest with the people that they're working with. Honestly, I think most people know, like inherently, they know when the client is being unreasonable or if you're stupid. Like you know, you got to have that power of discernment and use that power of discernment that every aware human has, and be real with yourself and look in the mirror. And if you find that you're the one that's being stupid or is not good at something, be honest with yourself and try to get better. That's the cool thing about being human, especially living in a culturally Judeo-Christian Western society where repentance and becoming better and renewal is normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, compared to like Eastern Japanese, like the reason why samurai killed themselves with seppuku is because it was more honorable to just give up than it was to keep trying.
Huh.
So it's like, if you're losing, it's more, if you've lost, then recognize that you've lost and say that you've lost, and that is more honorable than keep trying. But we live in a Judeo-Christian cultured Western world where it's more honorable to keep trying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beautiful. That's a very, very beautiful modern world that we live in. And because of that, like it's better for you to know what's going on and step up.
Yeah.
Be the man or woman that you know you can become. I mean, it's interesting. I heard someone on the podcast, a different podcast the other day, say, like, if you really think about it, every human being is only living up to 60 to 80% of their true potential.
Yeah.
Like, even at the best, at your prime, you're really only working at 80% of your true potential.
And that's probably on one factor.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
It was just kind of like mind-blowing. Like, there's so much more that we can be, and what it takes is for us to be honest with each other. And also having that respect of knowing when the client is right and knowing when you're wrong, and or also knowing that what the client needs to hear is they're paying you for your feedback, and
Yeah.
kind of finding the balance.
Call it a professional buddy system.
Yeah, I do think someone in the comments, CYMK on YouTube, commented, learning how to critique constructively is a whole art form in itself.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew this. Before we started co-hosting together, the first episode of the podcast is why most people who give feedback sucks. Like, why most feedback sucks. And I talk about, like, break down, like, the art of giving feedback and how most people giving feedback don't know how to be a good human to begin with, and on top of, like, be a good teacher.
Yeah.
It's like the difference of constructive feedback. Anyway, great episode.
Yeah.
It was like the first episode of the podcast ever. I don't know why, out of all of the topics I could have talked about, that was the first episode, but it's one of my most popular ones. It's a great one. Anyway, something to think about. All right. Any other thoughts?
No. It really just kind of comes down to, honestly, build good relationships, and a lot of times that just kind of comes down to communication. And when it comes to mix revisions and notes, and people's egos getting in the way of, like, oh, I don't like getting feedback from the artist, I don't like getting feedback from the engineer, whatever. Is it because your ego's in the way? You got to ask yourself right away, because the moment you start realizing your ego is playing a factor in what you're doing, especially when it comes to your income, you need to take a step back. You really need to take a step back.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a bunch of free resources on mixingmusicpodcast.com. Go check those out. On that note, happy mixing, my friends, and stay saucy.
Boom. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
I might make that like a bonus episode, not really a main content. I like the content, but I don't think it was like put together enough.
Well, we were spitballing the whole way.
The whole way, yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't feel
literally from the moment you hit record.
Yeah, and like usually we kind of like get the hang of it and like kind of push forward, but in that one it felt a little bit sloppy the entire way through, which is But let's do like a really technical one. But what were you saying before I interrupted you?
No, it was funny because I was talking to an artist recently because I asked him, like, how's everything going? How do you feel your progress has been? How do you feel about the team that surrounds you? This and that. Because what I'm trying to do more is, I guess, not necessarily reach out, but try to understand what's going on in my surroundings so I can have a better grasp of what's going on. Because if I don't ask questions, it's very easy for me to be in the dark, And, they mentioned, like, I have noticed this, I have noticed that. And the only thing I really cared to ultimately voice was like, hey, well, just so you know, like, I see what you've been doing. I see the amount of work you've been doing. And even if that's the case, just, I just want to make sure you understand, like, don't stop. Like, I've seen your progress. I know it gets hard sometimes. I know that communication doesn't always hit the same with everybody you're working with and all that kind of stuff. But, like, I see your progress. And even if it feels like it's kind of an uphill battle sometimes, like, bro, just keep pushing. Like I just, the light touch of, like, yo, like, I see your progress.
Dude,
like, if you don't feel acknowledged, like, I'm telling you right now, you're doing great.
I think there's everybody has hills that they're willing to die on, but one that is like important to me that, like, I think about often, like, is this really a hill that I'm willing to die on? Is the idea of, granted, temporal success, like in the idea of from others, right? Like seen by others, like in our case, winning Grammys, getting awards, having lots of streams. or with the podcast, more downloads, more listeners, more sponsors.
Mhm.
Fame, even close along the lines of fame.
Mhm.
I still think about that episode we did with BusyWorks,
Yeah.
and not specifically what he says, but like the ideas that he said is something that we all think about. Someone should give me that chance. If I just had that one opportunity to get onto stage and perform in front of everyone, I would be famous.
Yeah.
You know, or like, and this excuse of like, just given that chance and that opportunity, someone else gives me the ability to become famous.
Yeah.
The hill that I'm willing to die on is that I am living my life fully believing that I can make my own success if I'm consistent.
Yeah.
And it's a hill that I'm willing to die on. Like, I'm almost like low-key refusing to... It's probably not good. Like, low-key refusing to accept help from other people to a certain degree. Not in an unhealthy way, but like more like... I don't know. Like, I don't want to be... I don't know. There's something about it that I think about from time to time. Like, is this really going to work? Is the podcast going to become more successful if I don't seek help from others? Like, do I truly have to be given success and respect?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, like...
The conversation between Sway and Kanye.
Sway and Kanye?
Yeah. I
What's
don't know
that?
if you've been saying it. It's been blowing up hilariously because I guess in a recent interview with Kanye, he admits to not necessarily that Sway was right about, you know, you should do this on your own. Like, you don't need their support to do this. And Kanye blew up on him saying, like, you don't know, you don't have the answers. But now that Kanye's been doing things independently and succeeding at it, you know, they're like, so do you think Sway had the answer? He's like, you know, looking back, yeah, I guess he did. And Kanye's like, everybody's gonna be like, oh, Kanye, no. It's like, it's one of those, like, hey, in hindsight, you know, he probably could have been successful had he done it on his own earlier, but he probably was looking for a little more leverage before he could. Some people delay the start of going and focusing on themselves and doing things independently. But I think the way things have been moving, at least for you necessarily, is you've been able to show success even through independence. And one thing I always try to communicate to people is the concept of success is so relative to one's end goal. Like, my end goal has always been just to be able to provide for me, Anna, and if we have kids, our kids, you know? I just want that.
Yeah.
I don't really care how many awards or external successes you could say I get, but if I'm able to provide and live a happy life and make sure that there's a smile on Anna's face, then I've succeeded. Yeah.
I do think, anyway, that's something that I think about. I think it's a combination of both. But I have been able to garner a lot of success, like from the podcast we talked about last week.
Yeah. 500,000 downloads plus.
Over 500,000 downloads.
Yeah.
And that's genuinely
all organic.
From that's totally organic, just algorithm.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's just something that I've been thinking about. Let's talk about the 4 steps of mastering. Is it cool that I talk about
I don't
the 4
even
steps
know.
of mastering that? So
what are the 4 steps of mastering?
This is something that I was thinking about as I was trying to come up with topics. I thought we could break down, like, there's 4 components of mastering that you should think about, and let me know if you agree with this. Macro dynamics.
So the musical change.
Yeah, from like section to section.
Yeah.
Chorus volume versus verse volume kind of a thing. Just general dynamics. Micro dynamics, which
The
is
actual,
more transients.
yeah.
Tonal balance, which
Yeah.
is like EQ.
Yeah.
And loudness.
Yeah.
Those are like 4 main things. I could add like width, but like
That's
not
so
really-
relative. That's very, like, stylistically dependent.
Yeah, I wanted to do this episode. It's like, as a beginner, if you're like trying to master, like, these are the 4 main things. Would you agree
Yeah.
with that list?
Yes, I would.
Enough to do an
like,
episode about it.
Enough to do an episode, yes. Obviously,
Is there something you want to add to that list?
vibe. Like, this is the yeah, because like, let's say you focus on those 4 elements, you could still kill the vibe. Put it this way, like, when I first started mastering for Bob, the one thing he told me first before doing any of the work with him, he's like, hey, just make sure that, like, the overall groove of the song stays consistent, you know? Because, you know, for Bob, like, they're not paying him cheap dollars to mix. So, like, if I just focused on macrodynamics, microdynamics, what is it? What was the third? Tonal balance and that. Yeah, sure. I could do all that, but if it changed the groove at all, if it changed the feel or the vibe at all, then technically that master didn't do its job.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
All right, let's talk about that, and then
or
at the
retention
end,
of vibe.
The caveat is
The retention of vibe.
I do think that vibe and the retention of vibe is more important and more susceptible to be lost in the mixing stage than in the mastering stage.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Like, I've listened to a master I've done in the past, and then I listen to like the mix before when I get like a critique back from the engineer. They're like, I feel like this is lost, and I listen back to it, and I really try to put myself in third person. I'm like,
what I'm saying is I don't doubt that it'll change. I'm saying that how the flexibility of how much it could change and go away from the vibe is more. There's more risk.
More risk in the mix. But if it's an episode on mastering, you know.
Yeah, I think it's important. Let's make that like the fifth unspoken thing. But we'll talk about that.
The untaught.
Yeah. Okay, ready to go?
Wait, hold on. So I just want to hear this real quick.
Also, this music is crazy.
Was that? Oh, did you change it already?
Oh shoot! I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You were listening for it?
Yeah, I didn't know if that was a Smash theme.
Probably was.
It is. Yeah,
it was.
Okay. Sorry.
It's
like,
still going.
Like,
no, that's good. That's good.
The funny thing is, like, I don't know if you know, but like, I could fully mix and master with that song running in the background.
I don't doubt
like,
it.
Yeah, just having back when I was like mixing and mastering out of Studio A exclusively, having that running in the background in the lobby was like my white noise.
That's right. I remember that. I think we talked about it one point.
Yeah.
All right. Let's start.
Let's do it.
Hello and welcome back to the Mix of Music Podcast. I'm your host DK, and with me, as always, is Luscious Lou.
For those of you who don't know, that was a blow of a kiss because of my luscious lips.
Have you played
Licky Lips Lou?
Have you played Have you played not Full Metal? What is it called? Solid Snake. Have you ever played Solid Snake?
Oh yeah.
I was gonna call you Liquid Lou.
Oh, actually, yeah, that'd been nice.
Maybe next time.
Yeah,
I'll call you Liquid Lou next time.
Yeah. Snake.
Isn't like Liquid Snake one of the names?
Yeah.
That's what I'm not crazy. Okay, cool.
No.
Anyway, let's talk about today's topic. I think this is a pretty concise one. I have a feeling it's gonna be a little bit shorter, but the points are pretty important. This episode is the 4 main components of mastering to think about while mastering. And the thing is, these 4 main components, there's a 5th one that we're going to add as well at the end. And it's less technical, but it's still very, very important and something that we should talk about. So we're going to talk about 4 main components. And maybe we'll do an episode like this about mixing, but for now, just mastering. Number 1, so here's the 4, and we're going to go over each of these. But number 1 is macro dynamics. Number 2 is microdynamics. Number 3 is tonal balance. And number 4 is loudness.
Yeah.
In general, which has a lot to do with macro, micro, and tonal balance.
Yeah.
That 4th one encompasses all 4 of them. We're going to talk about how they all relate. But let's talk about. I think we've done an episode about macro dynamics versus microdynamics and what
we
they
did
are.
that with what's his name? YouTuber Panorama Mastering. Yeah.
Panorama Mastering.
Yeah, we did an episode with him about macrodynamics.
Yeah, so let's briefly give quick insight definitions. Macrodynamics is more like dynamics from a distance, meaning the changes in amplitude or volume, typically even as far out as between sections to sections.
Yeah.
Verse the perceived loudness of the verse versus the perceived loudness of the chorus.
Maybe the drop feeding into the chorus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So these are macro dynamics. Macro dynamics do matter and have a great deal to do with the emotions of a song.
Yep.
For example, if the verse going into the chorus was the same perceived volume and loudness as the verse and the chorus, they were the same volume and loudness, there would not be a emotional impact of it hitting the chorus.
Exactly.
So it is important.
Oh yeah.
What are micro dynamics, Lou?
That's more kind of like between the transient and the actual average volume between different sources in the master. So, for instance, let's say that you were to just throw a limiter on. A lot of times, first thing you'll notice is like the kick drum or the bass will be squashed by the limiter. And because of that, sure, you're getting louder, but you've actually killed any and all information that actually helps any, like, let's say any transients poke through or anything. So let's say that you had vocals and guitars. Cool. Those guitars might actually become a lot more prominent and actually squash the vocals more into the mix than the guitars should have been, had their, let's say that the vocals were the main focus. Guitars are now starting to slightly become a little more in focus and everything. You're starting to lose that perception. And a lot of times that's when you start messing up with microdynamics. First thing you'll notice, kick and bass start getting squashed, and then you start noticing that the mix starts squaring out and information starts losing definition between elements.
Yeah, so microdynamics is, in other words, transients.
Yeah.
Immediate spikes in amplitude.
Yep.
So less, so like in a
definition
chorus,
between it.
You're right, like
Yeah.
snare, kick,
Yeah.
those punches, moments of punches, which are important because if those are spiking,
Yep.
and they're hurting your limit, you want that headroom for loudness. So
Yeah.
going back to the fourth thing, which is loudness. If you don't have your microdynamics under control and you have a very spiky caterpillar-looking waveform, you're not going to be able to have the headroom. You're not going to have the headroom to make the entire thing much louder.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to think about. The last thing is tonal balance.
Mm-hmm.
Tonal balance is, think about EQ,
Yeah.
or even multiband compression, where that is a dynamic thing. But I want to think about dynamic in this sense, more about moving. So like an EQ, a cut or a boost, is a static, non-moving boost or a cut. But if you have a de-esser or a multiband EQ or a dynamic EQ or a multiband compressor, you're compressing a certain amount of frequencies. It's constantly moving with the song.
So it's a dynamic change.
Yeah. Where we're like, it is dynamic and it is micro or macro dynamic changes. But I'm talking about dynamics as in like static versus dynamic.
Yeah.
And in that case, like, that's important to think about. So like tonal balance is controlling like evenness of the low end to the mid range to the top end, but as well as like what space the vocals take, what space the drums take, balancing out the general tonal thing. Also, like considering the Fletcher-Munson curves or like the way that human hearing works.
Yep.
Adding more 2 to 4K is gonna make a song be perceived as louder.
Yep.
Right? So that goes into the loudness thing. Like bad tonal balance will also it'll sound off and it'll make people feel you can make people feel queasy and uneasy if it's just that off. It's an interesting phenomena. And the last thing is loudness. I mean, when we talk about loudness or mastering, loudness is usually one of the main components, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to get this mix or this master to sound as loud as we frickin' can.
Mm-hmm.
Why is loudness important, Lou? Why is that still a conversation we have?
So it's kind of funny. It kind of comes down to the human perception of what is better, right? If you listen to a mix that is, let's say, technically flawless, right? And it's ringing in at -14.
Technically flawless.
I don't know what the hell
No,
that
yeah,
would
yeah,
be,
yeah.
but yeah. Let's just pretend that such a thing could exist. And it's at -14. Then you play the same mix.
Jesus mixed this shit. That's how flawless.
And then let's say you played the same mix, but this time at -8, but some of the dynamics have been cut and everything. It's a little more squared off and all that. And you just played it to your average listener. Forget about professionals. They're going to be like, oh, well, I like the louder one. Why? Because a lot of people perceive louder as better.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the main reason we get loud, but rather we have to hit certain standards. Certain standards exist in our industry, and that's always been kind of a thing. So as people got louder, literally you're just trying to make sure that there's kind of like, you don't want to fall behind, because if other people's mixes are louder than yours, they're going to perceive not necessarily that your mix, but let's say that artist doesn't have as good of a mix or as good of a sound. People are going to, let's say a DJ wants to play your song on the radio. They don't want to have to tweak per artist. volume input. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want your client to fall below a certain standard. That's happening. Lately, it's been -8. It used to be -9 with CD standard. And there was a time where -10 was accepted after CD standard.
Really?
Yeah, there was a time where -10 was good enough. Jazz, for instance,
Well, I
still
mean, it's
ranges
also like
between...
totally dependent on genre, right?
Exactly. Like, jazz is still very much between like -14 and -10, but I have a lot more jazz clients asking for -8 now.
Really?
Yeah, like Sekou Bunch, amazing
He must have
producer.
like a lot of low end or something like
Oh,
that.
dude,
as
he's a
well.
bass player, but like he's insanely good.
Okay.
Like,
So it's like more modern
Oh.
low end.
yeah, but like because of that too, you're like, okay, he's acknowledging that. Sure, I'm a jazz guy, but I want it louder. You know, he knows that once it gets to go into play on radio and everything, they're not looking to. Sure, he's a jazz guy. He wants it at -14. But if none of the other modern jazz guys are doing it at -14 anymore, he doesn't want to be turned away just because they're going to have to match him up to the rest. You know, so part of the loudness thing is just matching standards. It's not necessarily that it's better, but it's usually perceived better by, I guess you could say, a static, like, general audience versus professionals. Professionals will always listen for dynamics. We'll listen to macro, micro, transient, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, we're listening for all that. But let's be honest, when I'm at the gym with my AirPods on, I don't give a shit. I just want to hear the song.
Yeah. So to put in, so again, just to restate and reemphasize, if there's two mixes that are absolutely identical and you play back both and one of them is 1 dB louder, most people, including engineers, will
Yep.
assume that the louder one sounds better.
Yeah.
Which we could talk about why it's important to bypass plugins and bypass them at the same perceived loudness as when they're turned on, so you can actually hear if
Yep.
it's helping. But this is why loudness is important, and for TV and film or competitive areas where they're pitching music
Mhm.
to these different companies, things get fucking loud.
Yeah.
Like if I could, they'll like master it to. They want me to master it to -2 if I could.
Yeah. Yeah.
And-
Actually, I had a client that wanted me to hit -5, and I was like, you sure? They're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, do you mind if I use like some EQ cuts to make it possible? And he's like, sure. Send it to him. He's like, why do I have less bass? I'm like, you're doing dubstep and you wanted -5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how electronic people do it. That's a whole different world in itself, and they've got loudness down to an art form.
I actually know him.
There's a lot of things that we can learn from that, but I'm not that guy.
I was actually talking to a friend of mine. He does mastering for electronic music. He's like, yeah, I average about -6, like average. I was like, really? And he played me one of his songs. I'm like, it's so good, but it's like a brick wall of sound. And he's like, yeah, you wouldn't believe how many mids you have to push. I was like, really? You're like pushing mids? He's like, yeah, you get a lot of people who do electronic music and they focus on the low end, but in reality, the loudness comes from the mids.
I mean, and it's crazy because these LUFS numbers are by the way, when we talk about -8, -12,
Yeah, we're
these are
talking loofs.
LUFS, loofs.
Yeah. I'll put the loo in
Loudness units, full scale. If you don't know what loofs are, LUFS is, watch a YouTube video. and then come back
Loudness
to
unit
this.
full scale.
But it's one of the ways that we engineers track the average level amplitude across the song. For example, basically it shows the average between the peaks and the valleys.
Yep.
And if there's a bigger difference between the peaks and the valley, that number is going to go lower, thus more dynamic range.
Yeah, and most of the platforms that are asking you to hit certain numbers, they're really focusing on integrated. So if you're looking at like a loose meter and it says short term, long term, or what is it? Short term, is it long term?
Short term or like
Long-term?
long term or integrated.
Yeah, integrated, yeah. But it's usually going to give you 3 options. Short term, you can always hit some crazy numbers. Like I've hit like -1 before, and that thing was a brick wall. But just focus on integrated. Just focus on that one. And in fact, have you ever used history mode on Insight?
History mode on Insight.
Yeah, it's a good way to track your macro dynamics. It'll actually show you your song as a mapped out dynamic change.
Huh, really?
Yeah, it'll show you your average loops section for section. Yeah, so it's actually a really good resource if you're trying to focus on learning how to do macro dynamics on your mixes. Even if it's not on the mastering stage, you're just trying to see if you're even mixing in those macro dynamics. Use history mode and just watch your song play out. If you had and he wonders like, is it too loud or too quiet, or is there no change? Like, I'm having a hard time hearing it. Maybe you fatigued after a while, you've been working on it too long. If you want a visual aid before taking a break, I guess maybe take a break before you do that. But if you want a visual aid, Insight from Isotope actually has that history mode, and it's great for that.
Yeah, so going back to loudness here, one of the things that I think is important is to also, I just want to bring this up. This is a small tangent. But like, for example, minus 8 dB LUFS, a song with no low end is going to be significantly louder than the song with more low end. Nothing else has changed. A song, identical song, but with more low end, minus 8 dBs is going to be significantly quieter with more low end. Low end takes up more energy, but it's harder to be, is more energy, but less heard by humans. Fletcher Music Curves, you should look into it. But anyway, so the point that we're talking about is the first three things go directly into the fourth. The microdynamics, the transients, directly affect how much headroom you have, and how much you can compensate with a limiter or compressor. That goes directly into how much headroom you have. Macrodynamics, I think, are more for like emotions. But also like. I'm trying to think. It's like macrodynamics. Like the chorus just has to be louder than the verse.
Yeah, just think about it like sectional changes. Like, let's say that you have a bridge coming from the verse into the chorus. Then great, you might automate that bridge comes down like a decibel from the start of the bridge all the way to the start of the chorus, so that when the chorus hits, you don't really notice that it went down a decibel throughout the bridge. But then once the chorus hits, it shoots back up that one on the transient, and because of that, it feels like it hits you a little harder, when in reality you didn't really lose too much of your macro dynamics.
This has happened a couple times where like I loop the loudest section of the song while I'm mastering just to get it right, and I've compressed or clipped or saturated or limited it so much that when I go back to listen to the entire song, the verses are just too loud.
Yeah.
So like you have to think about that as well. It's like if you compress and work on these dynamics, you have to, so like with microdynamics, like you got to control them, but with macrodynamics, like make sure that you leave room for that within section. Tonal balance, we talked about the low end and how much low end you have can directly result in overall loudness. That's why like a lot of these like super low end heavy trap songs are perceived to be a lot quieter than like your average pop song. It's because the tonal, like there's the 808s and the amount of low end going into that song is just so much that you hit these low average LUFS numbers so fast because the low end is just eating up headroom. So like that, how you tonally shape a song in a master definitely changes how loud you can get, both perceived and metered. Any other thoughts on loudness or any of the first 3 points?
I guess we can say this is like kind of like a unspoken, untaught fifth element, which is just vibe check.
Let's get into that.
Yeah, because honestly speaking, like we can go on and on about how to like apply the other four, but as much as you apply the four, you definitely want to be A-Bing the original mix and the master. And obviously, they're going to be two different loudnesses. You're going to have to compensate volume, blah, blah, blah. Cool. But when you're listening back to the two of them, sure, you might have found improvements sonically, but you have to ask yourself, do those sonic improvements retain the same vibe or enhance the vibe, or does it actually take from the vibe? Because sometimes doing too much transient shaping can take away from the vibe. Let's think about like, what song is it from Kendrick Lamar's Damn? Humble? I think it was. Was it Humble? With the
Humble.
big, huge ass bass, big kick drum. The snare's kind of sunken in a little bit. But like, it's kind of funny when it was sent to mastering, it was already loud and bass heavy and everything. So the guy's like, I'm not trying to do any more EQ. Like, there's a Mix for the Masters video for this, so you guys should look it up if you want to know about like bass heavy mastering in a hip hop domain. But he talks about how he's like, I'm not trying to clip it. I'm not trying to compress it. I have to kind of move the music around through the macro dynamics in order to make it feel loud. I have to push the vocal a little bit forward in the mastering, not touch the low end, because this song has certain vibe to it. And if I do too much of any one of the other things, I could actually lose the delivery of emotion between just trying to hit it too hard with the limiter, trying to get it to a certain loudness. He was able to achieve it, but he achieved it through very decisive methods within the first 4. But his number one goal was to not change the vibe of the record. And a lot of times when I'm working with clients, I've noticed 2 polar opposite clients. Artists want me to be the final ear to their master. Even if another engineer mixed it, if the artist has no intention of including me with the engineer, that usually means that they're intending for me to do what I must with the master to get it to where the client wants it. For some reason, there's a cutoff with the mix engineer. And I don't know if it's because they had a hard time. We talked about this in another episode with revisions, or if they have a certain idea of what they want the end goal of mastering to be, at which point, once again, I'm here to provide for my client. So if my client asks me for that, then great. If I'm in communication with the engineer, I ask the engineer, what is your intended goal out of the mastering? If you want me to be transparent and know if nothing heard and you don't mind it not being -1, then great. Then we've got a lot of room to work with and there's communication about what the end goal is. But number one with engineers is always preserve my mix. Preserve every bit of work and detail I put into this mix. I don't want it to change too much. Like, change what you must, but if it's feeling different, it's too much. If you make it brighter or bassier, like, so be it, but it cannot take away from the emotional integrity of my mix, because I've already put in so much time into it that if it doesn't feel like the same record anymore, or you've killed the microdynamics so much that there is no macrodynamics anymore, then the master fell apart.
We've talked many episodes about the importance of the emotional aspect, and we were talking about this off camera, off screen.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the most important things that many engineers talk about, in fact, Leslie Brathwaite right now is on
hey,
saying hi on the live stream on Instagram. But he actually, at one time I asked him, what is an advanced level mixing tip, like for advanced engineers?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, at an advanced level, the tip is, I'm actually on the previous episode that we did with him, he said the advanced level tip is like the emotions of the song, the vibe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when it comes for mastering, there's only so much that you can do to change a song, but you can still change it too much.
Yeah.
And being aware of that and keeping the vibe and the intention. Yeah, if you cut the macro dynamics or the micro dynamics and squish it too much, you might change the song negatively.
Yeah.
Or in a way that the artist perceives as negative. It's super important to be aware of that. And I think that is the fifth and final, last component. I didn't want it to be like I think people just keep forgetting how important that actually is at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And if you have that front of mind and use the first 4 components of mastering with that in mind, I think you're going to have it be in a much better starting place.
Yeah, because we can always talk about like, oh, in mastering, you want to make sure you're doing XYZ, check out for intersample peaks and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure. All that's important on a technical level. But at the end of the day, we work in a creative industry. And there's a lot more that actually goes into the overall goodness of the song versus the overall goodness of its technical end result. But let's be honest, we've all heard a technically great engineer provide a very boring mix before. We've all heard it. And like, it's like, yeah, wow, you really got that low end.
Not every mix is a hit. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I've heard mixes where like, wow, that low end and the kick and the snare, everything is so in its own space. But then you're like, why do I feel nothing? Like, it doesn't feel like it has a vibe or a certain attitude. It just sounds clean. Like it's a bar of soap. Hey, that's the best way I can describe it. You ever look at a bar of soap and get excited? No. It's clean, but it's not exciting. I'm going to start calling people a bar of soap.
That's just
You
funny.
look clean, but you don't excite me at all.
Oh my gosh. What is the phrase like?
Don't make a problem out of a molehill.
No, not that. I was going to say sometimes a clean mix is a boring mix. What is it? Is that what it was?
Yeah, a clean mix is a boring mix. I remember one of the notes that I ever got, and this actually shaped a lot of my mixing. I was mixing an album that Terrace Martin was heavily involved in as one of his friends, Adam Turchin. It was his album, and Terrace was helping him out with a couple records, and he played the mixes for Terrace Martin. And this was pretty early in like my like dedicated mixing career, where he said, "Oh, you guys are mixing too safe." Yeah, we wanted it
I've
clean.
definitely done that so many times.
Yeah, where he's
I've
like,
done
it's a
that so
good
many
mix,
times.
but it's too safe. And then we started changing the direction of the mix to be a little more like attitude driven. Like we started focusing on vibe, and that's what made the mixes really hit. Yeah, if you guys ever want to look up a good mixing engineer, you should look up the producer, Terrace Martin, because as a mixing engineer, he's really good. He's really good at vibe, and he's really good at clarity, and somehow has some of the deepest bass mixes that I've ever heard.
Really?
Yeah, he's really good. Like, if you want a vibe check your mixes against Terrace Martin mixes. Just a vibe check. Obviously, he's more jazz hip hop, but like, he's still really good. Don't doubt anyone because of their genre. Like, bro, he's got it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll be sure to do that. Check out some Terrace Martin stuff.
Yeah.
But on that note, I think that's going back over the 4 and the bonus components for mastering. Make sure to pay attention to macro dynamics, micro dynamics, tonal balance, and all of that leads into the overall loudness. And we talked about why loudness is important in general to this day. What do you think? The loudness war is ever going to end? I
No.
think the answer is no.
I think because of our habit of trying to find more headroom in the digital domain and finding ways that we can actually clip the meters just a little more and cleanly is just going to make it to where, oh, we can now average 6. Oh, we can now average 4. And soon it's going to be like +4 FS came out. It's the new headroom. There is no 0 anymore. There's +4.
At the same, like, if you can get a song to be 2 or 3 dBs louder, like LUFS,
Yeah.
but leaving no artifacts, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah,
Like,
honestly, yeah. Like Loudpack Traffic is one of my favorite references for loudness and low end information, and like it's not like it's a dirty
but
mid.
But it does
kind of
leave.
master.
It will leave artifacts. But if it didn't,
It will, but like it's impressive. Like I'm like, yo, you guys really pushed the loudness on this one, and yeah, I like the balance.
There was a mastering
I like the
engineer-
macro dynamics. I like the micro dynamics, and I like the vibe.
there was a mastering engineer that I posted on their story. This is months ago. I think we talked about this in person. But he posted on his Instagram story. It's like, look at this. And he's like showing off how he got the song to literally -2.
Yeah, and he's like, somebody stop me.
And it's like, somebody stop. He's like, and he's like, yeah, it's because I can, or something like that. It's like, because the song, it didn't hurt when it was that loud.
Yeah. I remember I was reading the comments on it, and honestly speaking, it was really polarizing which side people were on. One side was like, yo, you should never do that. As a mastering engineer, I cannot stand to see this. And then the other people were like, fuck yeah, how did you do it? I want to learn how to do that. What was your focus on? One side wanted to learn from this man's output, and the other side was like, fuck that. You know? But nobody was in the middle like,
All right. This is we're gonna end this episode with this question. What up, Skylar Gluck on
Gluck.
YouTube? What up? Hey, he came to our Pass the Aux,
oh, fuck yeah.
and we finally met in person. He says, if you had to pick a plug-in chain for mastering, what would you pick? I want to kind of change my answer on this. Not specific.
Did you even answer at first?
No. Well, I mean, sorry, not change my answer, but I want to change how I answer this. There we go.
Okay.
To instead of being specific plugins, but rather like genre styles of plugin. For me, if I'm gonna stick to 4, it is an EQ. Probably, well, I'm not gonna say we talked about not talking about specific ones, but an EQ is important.
Mm-hmm.
A slow compressor,
Mm-hmm.
a soft clipper,
Mm-hmm.
and a limiter.
Okay. I'm going to give specifics because I like how I use them, but I don't use them all the time. That's the biggest takeaway. If I mention these, don't use them all the time and don't use them in this order. But if I had to blindly master a song and try to get as good of a result as I could, I'd probably start with Inflator. then go to Oxford Limiter. Then I'd probably go to Ozone 9 and then end with Fab Filter L2.
Wait, say that again. Inflator?
So, inflator into Oxford Limiter into Ozone 9.
Directly into a limiter, into Ozone 9. What are you using in Ozone 9? Exciters?
Typically, I will use a dynamic EQ feeding into low end focus into the exciter, I think it's called. And that's it. Usually those three are my first go-tos. And then I'll end, if I had to limit myself to 4, like those are probably the 4 most effective ones I could think. Inflator, because I like that I can kind of shape in a somewhat parallel processing, and I can choose to either go more for top end or low end or somewhere in the mids. And I like to just touch it, like just tap the mix a little bit if I feel like it's lacking in a certain direction. Usually most mixes I get are good enough to not necessarily need it, but sometimes that parallel processing for loudness just helps push the track a little bit forward without losing too much of the macro dynamics. But you do notice some shaping in the actual micro dynamics. Oxford Limiter, I don't use it as a limiter. I just want the enhance, and I want it with without the safety curve, I think it's called. I forget what button is next to the enhance, but I really like that upper mid-range push that it does without having to actually change your loudness so much. It's just one of those perceived loudness things that we were talking about, kind of like in that 2 to 4K range. But I really like the way it does it. Like I've tried to like do it with other EQs, and it just does something special.
Yeah.
So those two to kind of like shape loudness in different ranges, like if I feel like it kind of needs it or maybe not. But then Ozone 9 for those things, like a dynamic EQ. If I hear some harshness going on, maybe I want to just do like some soft dynamic EQ, and maybe I'll set up the threshold instead of automatic, because in automatic it just bases it off of whatever it thinks it should do. But sometimes it's just like one specific part of a hi-hat that you just want to tame down just enough. Like you're not trying to change the shape of it, but rather just make it so it doesn't hurt when you put on headphones. And then lastly, the L2 limiter. I really like it. There's just something about like how you can dial in with all the different modes that I like. It's extremely flexible. And because of that, if you wanted something that's a little bit deeper, you can go with, what mode is this? Aggressive, where it has a little more low end push, but it also kind of like breaks it up a little bit. So if you were trying to go for just an aggressive sound, there's that. If you wanted modern, which is like a little bit more like defined low end limiting, cool. If you wanted to go with transparent because you're not trying to make the limiter very obvious, then there's that. But honestly, those 4 plugins usually do good when I need them to, but I don't always use them, and I don't always use them in that order.
So going back to that, the point that we were trying to make here is going back to making sure that you take care of those 4 main components.
Yeah.
With all of those, including the limiter, the inflator, which is more saturation, which is partially dynamics, but is also tonal as well. Something that you use to make sure you think about and take care of your tonal balance, your macro dynamics, your micro dynamics, and loudness, which is typically a limiter.
Yeah.
So on that note, obviously there's an infinite amount of ways that you could do this, and a lot of different philosophies that you can go into while mastering a song. And you should study a lot of other mastering engineers. And because there's many different ways, an infinite amount of ways to do stuff.
Don't study their change, study their mindset. It's all about the mindset.
There it is. Actually, that's a great, on that note, let's end on that. Study their mindset, not their chains.
Yep.
On that note, happy mixing, my friends, and stay saucy. Crap, I forgot to talk about our sponsors.
Us. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe I'll add this at the end. This episode is sponsored by the Mixing Music Podcast. If you like what we're doing and want to hear 3 times the amount of episodes, make sure to go to mixingmusicpodcast.com/exclusive to get access to 3 times the amount of episodes.
Cool.
I'll just slice that in somewhere. All
like
right,
a piece of pie.
Recording. And now I think we're going to get to the end.
What is the end?
Me signing off.
Oh.
Oh, man.
I think this pre-workout is still working.
All right. Do you, hold on. Young Eagle said, "Do you master with stems or do you master a WAV file with full song?"
It really depends on my client's intention. If they just want me to master a song and they're like, I can give you the stems, I'm always wondering why they want to give me the stems. Main reason is, to answer this quickly, is stem mastering is not mixing, and nor should the mastering engineer be remixing your song with those stems, unless you're actually asking for that, at which point they would probably charge you more of a mixing fee than a mastering fee. Main difference here is that if you ever provide a mastering engineer with stems, it should sound exactly like your bounce. If those stems don't sound exactly like your bounce, then that's not mastering, that's mixing.
We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're gonna give me money for it, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if Lou mixed the song for me,
Mm-hmm.
and or no, we talked about this. Like, my experience where it's like someone's
DK
like,
mixes it and says, "Oh, I have this song for you to master," and I'm like, "Cool, give me the stems, DK. I think I can get some great results if you give me the stems."
I'd take that. Like, I will take that person and be like, "Bitch, no, you use my master my mix. Don't change my mix."
Yeah, exactly.
Like, literally, I had someone do that to me. It's like, "Oh, can you send me the entire song, but just the kick separate as a stem, because I think I could do a better job."
Yeah.
I got so upset. I was
Now-
like, "Oh my, nah."
Now, I will say this. This is the only caveat that ever exists in this situation. If the client asks me for stems for a mix I did because they want stem mastering to happen, I would probably just communicate, "Hey, I'll provide you the stems. They'll sound exactly like the bounce. If you can, just make sure that the mastering engineer for the official master masters the bounce and not the stems itself," as some guys seem to think that they're just remixing the song, and we've worked really hard on making sure that it got to where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's an easy communication thing, but not everybody fully understands it sometimes.
This Longa Manuni on YouTube says, "What percentage of the time do you EQ on the way in for vocals, if any? If so, pre or post comp, i.e., 1073 EQ into the CL1B. Thanks for all you guys do learning this stuff."
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
To
do
be
you like?
honest, what percentage of the time do you EQ on the way in? All the time.
Yeah, I definitely, as much as I can. Well, I try.
It's,
I try
I have
not-
my favorite channel strip, which is the
if it's
LTD
available,
one.
you should.
Yeah.
You should use it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have a channel strip that you trust, 1073 is definitely not my favorite. To everybody, to each their own. To be honest, if you like 1073s, go ahead, good for you.
You should learn why me and Lou don't like 1073.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I like an LTD one, which,
Come up with your own
to be
opinion.
fully honest, is a 1081. But the way Chandler manipulated the card and
I will take
transformers
an
and all
API
that,
style every day, any day.
yeah,
I will take a Day King preamp any
Daking
day.
is good.
I will take a Great River preamp
Yeah.
any day.
But actually, Great River, I'm planning on buying one. Like, they're just too good. I wish I had a pair, but I'm gonna start with one. But realistically speaking, I'm an extreme believer. You can ask my entire staff in the way that I teach. I'm extremely big on get it on the way in, the way it's supposed to be. Not a good starting point. Everybody has a starting point, but if your starting point is less than good or in the direction that you're trying to go, then are you really listening to what you're recording, or are you just recording? Because, like, if you want to take it more seriously, the first thing you should change is not your chain, it's your mindset. Everybody has a different piece of equipment, right? And let's say that you're a traveling engineer. This is especially the case. You will not always have access to a 1073. You will not always have access to an API or a Daking or a Chandler or whatever. With that said, even if you are in front of a piece of equipment that's brand new to you for the first time ever, if you've learned to listen and learn to approach vocals a certain way, you can technically work with just about any tool. If that tool is not up to par, you should be able to hear that right away. It may not be the same frequency point. Let's say you're working on an SSL console. On most consoles, 8K numerically marked on the console on every single channel is usually not going to be the same 8K. On one console, on one channel strip, it may be 8.1. On the next channel strip, it may be 7.9. On the next one, it might actually be linear at 8. But just because you have the same EQ points at different studios on the same piece of equipment doesn't also mean that it's going to react the same way. Sometimes they're slightly different. This is kind of the magic of analog gear, right? They're never the same. And that's also kind of the terror of analog equipment. They're never the same. Consoles are especially susceptible to this due to power, I guess, the amount of power available for them that day. Let's say that there's 7 consoles all powered on constantly. Cool. Unless they're on isolated transformers and everything, they're all sharing the same power. So if one of them isn't on that day, there's more power available for the console. So it'll actually technically respond a little bit different. It's not supposed to, but older consoles tend to have this kind of issue, especially over time. Now, with that said, just approach no matter what EQ you have with the mindset of like, okay, I feel like the mic is dark. I would actually prefer the mic to be a little bit brighter. Cool. If you have a top end EQ, reach for the band that you like and boost it up a lot. Don't try not to do too much because it's easier to add than it is to take away. But you should be shooting for training your ears to where you can dial in on the way in. Like I have one of our runners, Matt Villanueva. He took on a session, used my vocal template and everything. And the cool thing about this is my vocal template it has an EQ, sure, but it's not engaged. It doesn't actually do anything. It's active, but it's completely zeroed out. And the cool thing is he recorded a client and used his ears with the equipment to dial in the vocals for each artist on the way in. And then at the end of the night, they said, cool, that sounds great, bounce it. And then about a month later, I get a call from the manager saying, hey, we'd like you to master this mix that we have. I'm like, okay, great. And I listen to the song. I'm like, oh, that's the song you guys worked on that day. Mac mixed it for you? They're like, no. I mean, he mixed it during the session. And I opened up the session because all they had was the session file. Matt didn't do anything. He didn't turn on a single compressor, an EQ. All he did was put a limiter on it. And it sounded amazing already, you know? So he dialed on the way in, didn't have to do a single mix, and the client wanted it mastered then and there. And even when I played it back, I was like, this sounds great. So you definitely want to get into the habit of processing on the way in just for your own personal growth as an engineer or as a professional recording yourself. Just so that you can kind of understand your direction a little more and learn to commit a little more. And that way, when you find different records that you're working on in different rooms, you're kind of not approaching it because of a specific piece of gear, but rather with an intended end goal in mind.
In general, first off, I know it's kind of scary. You gotta have the practice and the confidence to be able to commit to stuff.
Yeah,
it's a big commitment thing, as well as the point of it doesn't matter when you use EQ or anything like that. The point of the gear and even the chain going in is do exactly what Lou said, which is just save you time. That's what it's meant to do.
Yeah.
So you don't have to use any plugins on the way in if you know what you want to begin with. So you change the input signal to be what you want from the get-go.
You know how some
Saves
people
so
say
much
back
time.
in my day? I want to say back in their day because it definitely wasn't my day. But back in their day, when it came to processing on the way in, the main reason is because they were using hardware. And if they didn't have enough hardware for mixing an entire song with no processing on it in post, they were trying to mix it on the way in. They were trying to get it to sound the way it's supposed to as soon as it hit tape with all faders at 0. So when they send it to the mixing engineer, all faders can be at 0 with no EQ or compressors on, and it's already in the direction that it should be. Like, can you imagine what dialing in the rough mix was like back in the day? Like, you know how much time it just takes just to dial in a rough mix already just on the computer? Can you imagine doing that on the way in back in the day?
Yeah, it must have been crazy.
Yeah, you got lucky if the studio had like 5 compressors. Because let's be honest, like, we all realize inflation happens. You know, we know that a U87 used to be $1,000. Cool. Well, here's the thing. It's not anymore. So can you imagine how much an LA2A was back then versus minimum wage? You know, like most studios didn't have a giant wall of gear. Most studios were just the console and whatever was built in and maybe a few pieces on the side. But they the tendency was to invest more in the console, the patch bay, and the tape machine than it was on the rest of the external gear. So you used what you had available and you tried to use it on the way in to save up on resources after. How that applies nowadays is computer power. If you don't have a limitlessly powerful computer, then you're going to run out of computer power after you throw in so many plugins to fix all the things you could have fixed on the way in.
All right, on that note, I'm starting to lose focus. I gotta edit these episodes and release them for tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening. We're gonna slowly exit out the stream. Happy mixing, my friends, and
Stay saucy.
Stay saucy. Oh, what's this? What is this? Oh, guess what? There it is. Bye bye. Happy mixing, my friends. Stay saucy.
Here we go. Performance for you. If you know the words, you can join in too. Put your hands together if you wanna clap as we take you through this monkey rap. He's the leader of the bunch. You know him well. He's finally back to kick some tail. His coconut gun can fire in spurts. If he shoots ya, it's gonna hurt. He's bigger, faster, and stronger too. He's the first member of the DK crew. DK, Donkey Kong. DK, Donkey Kong. He's got style, so listen up to. She can shrink in size to suit her mood. She's quick and nimble when she needs to be. She can go through the air and climb up trees. If you choose her, you'll not choose wrong. With a skip and a hop, she's one cool car. He has no style, he has no grace. This car has a funny face. He can handstand when he needs to and stretch his arms out just for you. Inflate himself just like a balloon. This crazy car just digs his tune. DK, Donkey Kong. DK, Donkey Kong is back again and about time too. And this time he's in the mood. He can fly real high with his jetpack on. With his pistols out, he's one tough call. He'll make you smile when he places